I am interviewing Bernard Levy today. Today is May 27th, 2014, and we are in the, I still call it the Sheps. We are at the Jewish Community Center. Hi, Bernard.
Hi.
Tell us, let's go before the beginning. Where were your parents born here in Dallas?
No, my mother was born in Houston in around 1895 or thereabouts, and my father was born in Poland, and came to Dallas in 1906. In the old country, his father was a blacksmith and trained all of his sons, with one exception, in the blacksmith trade in the shop.
How many sons?
There were 5. He had 5 sons and 1 daughter. The oldest son, who was the oldest son, was already married and had his own blacksmith shop, and never came to the United States. All of the others left Poland and came to the United States. The ones that remained there were wiped out. They were gone. That whole family is gone, with the exception of a couple of descendants who are in Israel that we're in contact with all the time. At any rate, my father came to Dallas in 1906, along with another one of his brothers, and they went into they found that there was no need for blacksmiths in Dallas at that time, but they knew about metals and how to handle metals and so on, and they drifted into the plumbing trade. They worked for local plumbers and learned the plumbing trade, and in 1910 my father and that brother went into business under the name of Levy Brothers Plumbing. That lasted for several months. They had some sort of falling out, and they split up. My father continued to operate under the name Milton B. Levy Plumbing. My uncle, the other brother, was known as Levy Plumbing Company, and in the split up, he arranged that my father could not use the word company, and from that day until this, we don't use the word company in our business.
Milton's brother's name was?
Morris Levy.
Morris.
Do you know the name his daughter was my cousin, I can't get her name out. Wolf.
Lois? Lois?
No, she died just a few years ago. She was well-known, very philanthropic. Oreen Wolf was my cousin, and she was the daughter of that other brother. After that split up, my father and that brother didn't speak to each other for many, many years. Growing up, I never spoke to my uncle. My mother would point out on the holidays, there's your Uncle Morris, and that's all I knew of him. One of the other brothers, who was not raised in the blacksmith shop, came to Dallas and became a doctor, a well-known surgeon and doctor in Dallas, Dr. Harry Levy. The last of the 4 brothers who came over settled in Detroit, was there for a long time. Finally wound up with his family in Dallas as well.
What got you, why Dallas? Why not
They
Cincinnati?
had an aunt, they had an uncle and an aunt who lived in Dallas. Now, how they got here, I don't know. But my uncle's name was Wolf Goodstein, and he was the shamus of Sheriff Israel. He lived on a street near where Sheriff Israel was. Sheriff Israel was located on Park and Aiken for many, many years. And my aunt and uncle lived close to that, near there. And he would walk to and from the shul and so forth, did all of his duties.
Where did you live growing up?
Pardon me?
Where did you live growing up?
We lived in South Dallas.
Uh-huh.
In 1926, which was the year I was born, my father built a small building on the corner of Irvy and Sanger in Dallas, which is about a mile and a half south of the immediate downtown area.
South of downtown?
Just
Did you say
south of
south?
downtown, right. And in addition to the shop, behind the shop, he built a two-story frame duplex. We lived downstairs, and my mother had a sister, and her family lived upstairs in that duplex, and we lived there for many years. That's where I grew up until
What school did you go to?
went to Colonial School, Colonial Elementary School, and to Forest High School.
What was your childhood like? Was it a religious household? Was it a
Was it what?
what was your childhood like as far as, were you in a religious household? Were you
Well,
did you have friends in the area?
No,
Were there a lot of Jews?
we were fairly religious. My father was religious, but not 100%.
Uh-huh.
But he knew what was required. He knew all of the holidays and the mitzvahs and so forth, and insisted that I was going to learn all of it. And went to Sunday school at Sheriff Israel, and then to Hebrew school beginning when I was about 7 years old, and went to the Dallas Hebrew school until I was 15. And my mother kept a scrapbook, and that's what I brought here. This is all personal stuff about me, starting from when I was very, very young, all the way through college.
Do you have brothers and sisters?
I have one sister. Her name is Ruth Strauss. She's 94 years old. At this time she's single, and her health comes and goes. She's got health problems, but usually seems to bounce back. And she and her daughter right now live in Prosper, which is north.
Oh, yes.
North of what's the next town up there?
North of Allen, way north of Allen.
Yeah, yeah.
Before you get to, I can't think of the
Okay.
city, I know where it is. You're on your mother's side. You said she was born in the United States.
She was born in Houston.
Mm-hmm.
She later she met my father through one of her sisters had married Mr. Gita in Dallas, who was in the laundry and tailor supply business. And through that sister, she met my father, met her husband, and were married. What she didn't know was that at the time she married him, he had not yet become a citizen. So she lost her citizenship and didn't know it until World War II, and she found out that she was no longer a citizen. She had to go through the process of regaining her citizenship.
Huh. Things have changed. Did you live in South Dallas the entire time growing up?
Pretty much. We lived in that house until about I was born in 1926. We lived there until 1939.
Oh.
I was 13 years old. Had a terrible fire, and the upper part of the house was completely burned up. The lower part was salvaged later, but we moved out, and we lived across the street on Irvy Street. There was a 4-unit brick building that was owned by the Glaziers. Mr. Max Glazier's parents lived in that house, and we rented one of those apartments and lived there for a number of years. And while there, I finished high school and then went on to college and so on.
Where did you go to college?
Went to Texas A&M. My mother had insisted, and I clearly remember it, that she didn't want me to be a plumber. So at any rate, I did very well in high school, and went to Texas A&M, and this was during the war. I was not drafted, didn't have to go into the service. That's another long story. But at any rate, I finished at A&M and had the highest grade point average in the graduating class when I graduated. I graduated in February of 1945, and at that I graduated just about a week before my 19th birthday. I was 18 years old.
So you must have skipped a lot of grades.
Mechanical engineering. After that, during the war, there were no openings for new engineers. So I went to work for General Electric in Schenectady, New York, and was there for about a year and a half or two. And after that, I decided I wanted to go further in school and possibly to teach and so on. So I applied in several places and got an appointment at Purdue University, and intended to get a PhD. I was there for about a year and a half. My mother had very serious kidney problems, and the family imposed on me to come back home. So I came home, and she did pass away a year or so after that. Came to Dallas. I went to work for a consulting engineer for Herman Bloom, who was a consulting engineer in Dallas, and worked for him for a couple of years. And my father finally imposed on me to come into his business, which very reluctantly I did. and had a pretty hard time of it for a number of years, but I finally learned what it was all about and settled
Because it
down
didn't
into the
interest
plumbing
you?
business.
Because it didn't interest you, or because?
Pardon me?
Because the business didn't interest you, or because you promised your mother you wouldn't?
Well, I didn't promise anything, but that's where I wound up.
Well, how did you like it after you got used to it?
Well, finally, about 5 years later, I learned to like it,
Uh-huh.
but it took me a number of years to get to that point.
Backtracking a minute, and then we'll catch up here. Did you meet with any anti-Semitism growing up in South Dallas?
A little, but not very much. In those days, we really didn't see it. I mean, we Forest High School had a pretty large Jewish population. I'd say probably at least a third, if not more, of the students at Forest High School were Jewish. So that was not a problem. And the non-Jewish, I just don't remember any really overt or serious anti-Semitism.
Most of your friends, though, were Jewish because?
Yes,
Mhm.
yeah.
So your family belonged to Sheriff Israel from the very beginning until now, until this
My
day?
father had joined in 1912, and he was only just over 20 years old,
Mhm.
and he joined Sheriff Israel at that time, and we remained members of Sheriff Israel ever since. I was president of Sheriff Israel in 1981 to 83. And because I had from the Hebrew school, which was exceptionally good, we really were deeply immersed in Judaism, learned Hebrew. I'm fairly fluent in Hebrew, and I think I know quite a bit. And because of that education, I had a deep feeling for Jewish education. And while I was president at Sheriff Israel, along with a couple of other people, such as Willie Waldman and Irvin Donsky, and a few other people, we founded the Sheriff Israel Day School, which today is the Levy Academy.
Have your children and grandchildren, and maybe great-grandchildren, kept up the tradition of members of Sheriff Israel?
Not as much as I'd like for them to.
Mhm. Mhm.
Some more than others, but
Yeah.
I wish that it was more. But they're all good kids.
Yeah.
I have we have we have 7 grandchildren, and now one great granddaughter.
And how many children did you have?
3.
3 children.
Yeah.
Girls, boys?
I have one son who's in the business, and these days he mostly runs the business.
Mhm.
He doesn't know it, but I'm I'm still there. But at any rate, and then 2 daughters. One daughter here in Dallas, who was married to Lonnie Pollock, part of the Pollock family, and then divorced, and now she's remarried to a very fine young man, not so young anymore, from South Africa. and she's in real estate and doing pretty well. And then the last daughter lives in Houston, and she and her husband have a flooring business. They do tile and stone and whatnot.
What are their, starting with the oldest, what are their names?
The children?
Uh-huh.
My son's name is Arnold,
Arnold. Mm-hmm.
and the girls, the next daughter is Frada. Her name is Frada Mira. We wanted to name her after my mother. My mother's name was Fanny, but she always told us that she didn't like the name Fanny. And her Yiddish name was Frada Mira, so when this little girl was born, we just named her Frada Mira, and she loves it.
Yeah.
She's one of a kind. And the last daughter is, her name is Hope.
How did you meet Ruth? How did you meet your wife?
Well, through friends. One of my friends was Bennett Goodman and his wife. My mind's wonderful, except I can't remember.
Yeah. Tell me about it.
It gets worse. Pat, Patricia, they were good friends. Pat, in particular, was one of Ruthie's friends, and Bennett was my roommate at A&M for a period of time. At any rate, they introduced me to Ruthie. And another friend was Melvin and Mimi Aronoff, and Mimi was one of Ruthie's very good friends. So from those friends, I met her, and we went out and so forth.
When did you get married? Before you went north for a few
No,
years, or
it was after I came back and settled down in Dallas. We were married in 1949, which was about the time that I went into the plumbing shop.
I see. Are there any particular stories or adventures you had there that you've had that you'd like to share with us? Just anything that marked your life in one way or another. It's a hard question.
Well, of course, it's been a long time, and there've been a lot of things. I can remember, I was thinking, one of the things that I remember among so many, as a little boy, occasionally, my dad would take me out on a Saturday or even a Sunday to a job or to something related to his business. And one of the places that I remember very distinctly was to go to the grocery store on Pearl Street. I remember it very, very well. There was wasn't there part of the creek that ran by it, and I always remember that.
That's the name. And what was the name of this grocery store?
The Andrus grocery store. I remember Mr. Andrus and Mrs. Andrus
Yeah.
very, very well.
Yeah. And their son, David Andrus.
Sure.
Good family. Who have been your role models in your life? Do you have some?
Yeah, I have. I had a cousin, part of the family that lived in the upstairs where we were on Sanger Avenue. Beryl, their name was Light. And one of the sons was Beryl Light,
Mhm.
and he went to A&M,
Mhm.
and he was he was probably the reason that that I wanted to wind up at A&M. Aside from the fact that it was not very expensive and had a lot of other things going for it.
Do you still keep in touch with the same people that you grew up with in the community here?
With all of them that are left,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm 88 years old, so too many of my friends are not here anymore. But
Mhm.
of those that are left, yes,
But you kept close.
our closest friends are all of these same people and others of
Yeah.
the group.
Who, do you have some names other than the Anderses and the,
Well, another one of our friends is Shirley and Marvin Gardner.
oh,
um, Marilyn, Harold and Marilyn Sweet from the Sweet family.
oh,
We live at the Bonaventure, and it's full of friends. It's full of people that I went to high school with or was close to for some other reason.
yeah. That's a city down there.
Yeah.
Huh? Oh, someone's nudging me to say, we want more stories of you growing up and some of your adventures that are in your memory.
Well, associated with the Hebrew school, we had a Boy Scout troop, and I was in the Boy Scouts,
Mhm.
and became an Eagle Scout,
Mhm.
and was, can't remember the title, but well, I had a title in the troop, scout leader or something. Did all of that. I've always loved music. As when I was very small, again, these upstairs cousins, one of them was a very, very accomplished pianist, Lozelle Light, and she was, in her day, was probably the finest piano teacher in Dallas.
Mm.
At any rate, as a real little fellow, I started to learn piano from her and worked at that for a couple of years. In high school, another one of the Light boys was Sidney Light, who was the head of the band at Forest High School.
Mm.
And he played the clarinet, so I had to play the clarinet. So we went to take clarinet lessons, but my dad couldn't afford to buy me a clarinet, so we rented the clarinet for, I think it was like 50 cents a week or something like that. And I learned to play the clarinet, was in the band at high school. I always liked the flute, and I kept saying to myself, one day I'm going to learn how to play the flute. And time went on and didn't learn how to play the flute until I was 60 years old. And I said, I still like the flute, and I'm going to learn how to play it. So I searched around. I looked for a flute teacher, and in my search, I wound up talking to Philip Weinkrantz, who was a very good violinist and a musician, and asked for his help. And I said, I want to learn how to either play the flute or the violin. He says, well, forget about the violin. It'll take you 20 years to make one good note.
Uh-huh.
But he found me a gentleman who was in the Dallas Symphony at that time, and I started to learn to play the flute. And I did. Played it for a while, put it aside for a while, and then stumbled onto a thing called the New Horizons Band, which is a wind band for older people. You had to be at least 50 years old to be in it. The average age of the people in the band is probably 75 or more.
Mm.
At any rate, I joined that band and I'm still in it.
Oh.
And we practice once a week, and we play concerts from time to time when there's somebody that needs for us to do it.
And what's the name of this group?
New Horizons Band.
New Horizons Band.
This New Horizons thing exists all over the country, and they're in practically every city in the country. And Dallas, there are about 60 people in this band, very large.
Oh my gosh, how wonderful.
When I went in, there was only, like 20 or less.
Mhm. Mhm.
But that's been a hobby and
So you,
something like.
so you picked up the flute at 60.
Yeah.
Were you, between your teenage years and 60, did you play the piano much, or?
No, while I was in high school, I was
Uh-huh.
playing the clarinet in the
Uh-huh.
band.
Uh-huh.
But after high school, I didn't own a clarinet,
Mhm.
and I wasn't that good anyway,
Mhm.
and I put it aside.
Mhm.
But I've always liked music.
Mhm.
I've been interested in and love music.
Your children, are they interested in music?
No, not really.
Uh-huh.
At home, we always had a piano. And I finally ended up giving the piano to the daughter in Houston because she has two children. We thought that the children are going to learn to play the piano, and they tried, but they didn't stay with it. So nobody's ever really stayed with it. I've given instructions. I own my flute is a pretty good one. Pretty expensive and a good instrument. And I've left instructions that if any of my children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, or any of them have an inclination or show any aptitude or desire for that flute, to give it to them. Otherwise, I want it going to maybe a student at SMU or somewhere who needs a good instrument.
Yeah. Well, I think we've covered it. Have I left anything out that you would want to add?
Not really. I've brought all kinds of stuff in here.
I know, and I want to see it.
And I don't know whether
we
you
go-
have time or any interest in any of it,
Well,
but
let's-
there's one thing,
Mhm.
the main thing that I meant to bring here, and I ran out in a hurry and didn't do it. I started to tell you about it as we walked down the hall. In 1980, I had a call from a lady with the Dallas Public Library
Mhm.
that they wanted to, they were going to write, somebody there or a group of them were going to write a book and include in it several of the local family businesses that have been in business through at least 3 generations.
Mhm.
And they wanted to know if we were interested in interviewing and being included in this thing. So I thought that would be good, and we did.
Mhm.
And they came out a number of times. They interviewed my father. This was about 2 years before he passed away. my father, and then me, and then my son. And there are different sections in this book about each one of us. It's very interesting, along with about 4 other families. And I meant to, if you want it, I'll give you a copy of it.
Well, I'm interested in what's in there, but I'm thinking, should we stop the camera and lay out the things
Yes,
and
exactly.
then continue?
Yeah.
Okay.
Here is, ready? Here is a scrapbook that my mother kept almost from the time that I was born. And she kept as many different things that I was involved in or accomplished and so on.